You can see a large police presence, federal presence that is happening amid reports tonight of a shooting that involved federal agents. Here's what we know so far, and we're still learning more details right now. City officials tell CNN that they are working to confirm what they know as we've reached out to police for more information about what has exactly led to the scene that is playing out. We'll bring you those details and confirmations as soon as we have them. We did hear from the governor just in the last hour. Tim Walz slammed the Trump administration for this ongoing ICE operation that we've seen playing out in his state.
2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
Comments from the governor today as federal agents have been seen using aggressive tactics in recent days against residents and protesters as fallout has continued after the shooting death by an ICE agent of Renee Good last week. CNN's chief data analyst Harry Enten is here because, Harry, I do think there are some really interesting numbers that are coming out in terms of what we're seeing in the aftermath of this, of how Americans are feeling about what they're watching.
Yeah, I think there really are, Caitlin. And, you know, I should just start off by saying that Americans at this point do not like ICE. And that is very different from what we saw during Trump's first term. Just take a look here. ICE's net approval rating. In Trump's first term, ICE, you know, kind of lukewarm. You had them right there at a net approval rating of 0 points. Look at where we are today. We're talking about a negative 17-point approval rating. That is a 17-point drop from where we were during Trump's first term. Among independents, the number is even lower in terms of the net approval rating. And why is it that ICE is so unpopular at this point? Well, take a look at our new CNN SSRS poll, and I think this sort of gives the game away. ICE enforcement is making U.S. cities less safe. Look at this, 51%. 51% of Americans say that ICE enforcement in cities is making those cities less safe. That includes 59% of Americans who live in cities, compared to just 31% who say that, in fact, ICE enforcement is making U.S. cities more safe. So what we see here is Trump and ICE losing this argument over ICE going into cities, making them more safe. Now, of course, the ICE discussion is part of a larger argument, right? A larger discussion about immigration enforcement in this country. And, you know, when it comes to Donald Trump, remember, he's run on immigration in all three of his presidential bids. It's a big reason why he got elected the first time around, won that Republican nomination. It was a strength for him earlier on during his second term. Look at this. His net approval rating, according to our CNN polling, was at plus 3 points on the positive side of the ledger. But look at where it is now. It is way underwater at 16 points on the negative side of the equation. That is a 19-point drop in less than a year's time. Now, what is one of the big reasons why Donald Trump's net approval rating on immigration has gone down, Caitlin? Well, it simply comes down to this. Trump's gone too far in deporting undocumented immigrants. Look at this. Back in February of 2025, it was 45%. Now it's a majority of Americans, 52%, and that includes Caitlin Collins, 56% of independents. The bottom line is this. ICE and Trump are losing the argument when it comes to the American people. They don't like this immigration enforcement, and it is costing Trump political points at this time, Caitlin.
Harry Enten, appreciate you bringing us those
Thank
numbers.
you.
I've also got my political sources here tonight, including Karen Finney and David Urban. And David, you know, we have just been talking about this. Immigration has historically been such a strong area for the president, especially with what he did with the southern border after he came into office, you know, about a year ago this time. What do you make of those numbers and what they look like? As we're watching this scene that's playing out, I should note, in Minneapolis tonight and still trying to learn more about what's going on.
Listen, if I was working in the White House, I'd take that second slide that Harry had, the net, you know, that swing from March of 25, the president's number till today, on immigration, and show him exactly how popular this is and what this is going to mean in the midterms. You know, when the president went and addressed the House, talked to the House Republicans a few weeks ago, he said, "Listen, guys, if we lose, I'm going to be impeached." And I'd give him that sheet and say, this is your one-way ticket to impeachment, Mr. President. You better figure this out pretty quickly. Everybody elected this guy to close the border, to go after bad hombres, right? Nobody wanted to see what they're seeing playing out on their televisions day in and day out, especially right now in Minnesota. And so I think that they better turn the ship around pretty quickly on this, or they're gonna, the Republicans are gonna suffer broadly an election, because this isn't what Americans wanted.
And it's a question of how Democrats will handle it in response, because
Well,
we've seen what they've been saying. And I think something from the Minneapolis mayor, Karen, stood out from Jacob Fry, talking about the difference in what is a lawful purpose by ICE and what he says has been playing out in his city.
I do not support abolishing ICE. However, I absolutely oppose the way that this administration is conducting themselves with us. American citizens are being taken off our streets right now, and I hope any American citizen out there can understand how concerning that is.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of what is so shocking, and part of the reason I think is one of the other things in these polls that are coming out, over 60% of Americans say they've seen something about this, they've watched a video. So this is really sinking into the conscious of America in the way, frankly, that the murder of George Floyd did. And I think part of the reason is the violence and the sort of indiscriminate violence. I mean, earlier today, I was, just on social media, there's, a little kid being held back because ICE was trying to get the parents to come out of their house. You see them, crashing windows and trying to literally rip people out of their cars. And these end up in many cases being American citizens. And it is terrifying and it is brutalizing. And again, I think people would say, this is not what we voted for. What we voted for was, and the other interesting thing in these polls is, it's actually building more support for comprehensive immigration reform, which is what we were trying to do during the Biden administration just last year. And it was, Trump himself who killed that. So I think Democrats have an opportunity to go on offense and talk about what is, because we're having a similar conversation, frankly, that we did after the murder of George Floyd, which is use of force. Let's talk about accountability. Let's talk about what is appropriate use of force. But these ICE agents, we're hearing reports, our own reporters today were saying they're undertrained. They're not trained in how to de-escalate. They're not even using sort of best practices in terms of law enforcement, in terms of how you would approach people. And so I think there's a conversation we can be having about what it should look like versus what you're seeing.
But, given that, and David, you mentioned the administration, what you would politically advise them to do. They have only leaned in since the death of Renee Good. They've only started to actually move forces in. And as there are these reports tonight of another ICE involved or federal agents involved shooting, and we're waiting to figure out what happened, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche weighed in and said that ICE operates in thousands of cities without incident. He said men and women doing their jobs and protecting us from criminal aliens. He said Minnesota insurrection is a direct result of a failed governor and a terrible mayor encouraging violence against law enforcement. Todd Blanche says it's disgusting and that he is focused on stopping you, meaning the governor and the mayor here, from your terrorism by whatever means necessary. This is not a threat, it's a promise. How do you read that?
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Okay? I don't know what that means. It's, not to be too harsh, that sounds like a Kamala Harris answer. I can't know what it means, okay? Here's what I know.
Not to be too harsh, but I will.
Okay. Listen, here's what I know. It's a sanctuary city. If you want to cooperate with ICE, like the mayor's like, oh, we love ICE. Come on in. No, you don't love ICE. It's a sanctuary city. We're saying we're not gonna help. We're not gonna cooperate with the federal government in these things. If the mayor and the governor want to de-escalate and turn the things down, say, listen, we're gonna cooperate. There should be a powwow of some sort because clearly what's going on right now, everybody in America can see this. This isn't working, right? It's not working for the federal government. It's not working for the local government.
This issue with law enforcement, because remember that local law enforcement, there are real reasons from a law enforcement perspective when you talk to them about why sometimes they believe that ICE should be their federal government, that is their responsibility, and they are in the business of trying to build a long-term relationship and trust in the community. So sometimes these ICE enforcements conflict with their ability to do that. Now, I would bet you, if they rolled in and said, hey, we know where Tren de Aragua is, and we're gonna go get them, y'all wanna be with us? 1,000% everybody would be on board with that. That's not what's happening.
I know, but
when
when
you a woman in the face.
No, I'm not debating this. I'm not debating that part. I'm just saying.
Said tonight about Renee Good because he sat down with our buddy Steve Holland from Reuters in the Oval Office tonight. Steve did a really good interview with him. And the president, Steve asked him if he believed that the ICE officer did the right thing by shooting Renee Good. And President Trump told Steve Holland, "I don't get into right or wrong. I know that it was a tough situation to be in of the ICE officer's involvement." He said there was very little respect shown to the police in this case, the ICE officers. It's so sad to see on both sides.
And before that, he said, I'm sure she's a nice woman. He made comments earlier in the day to another outlet. But another outlet, he made comments today. Listen, everybody in America, I think we can be better than what's happening right now. That's the underlying theme here. I wish cities would try to figure out a way not to be sanctuary cities and fight the federal government and enforce laws they like and not enforce laws. Listen, I don't want to pay my taxes. Does that mean maybe me and my people in my city can get together and say, we're not paying taxes? We're a tax sanctuary city. Come here. You want to live here in Fort Myers, Florida, and not pay your taxes? Move here. You can't just pick and choose which laws you like and which laws you don't like.
Ultimately, David, I'm going to pull from something you said this morning, though. If this continues, that is not a reason to give Republicans more power in the midterm elections.
Well, those numbers, as you see, Harry's numbers, they're not good.
Nope.
Karen Finney, David Urban, thank you for that. And I should note, we are continuing tonight to follow a report of a shooting involving federal agents in Minneapolis, just a few days after the death of Renee Good. We see a swarm of law enforcement officers as well as demonstrators right here in the scene. We're going to bring you the latest and what we know from our reporters on the ground tonight, and also an update on that other story we've been following tonight. The Justice Department is reaching out to Democratic lawmakers about that video telling military members they should resist illegal orders. One of those Democrats will join me right after this.